Hello again, this is Kurt, and welcome back to the Kurt's Place channel here on YouTube. The title of this video is going to be called Arcade Games, How They Shaped My Life and Still Do Today. This is basically just a video telling you how I got started in video games and what basically got me to the point that I am today with all these machines that I have today. I was born in 1970 in Huntsville, Alabama, and basically from 1970 on to 1980, my dad and I did things together, but hadn't really gotten involved with video games a lot. That all changed in 1980 when my dad took me to Aladdin's Castle. That was one of the places that we went. We used to go. We lived in Vestal, New York at the time. My dad took me to Aladdin's Castle at the Oakdale Mall. That pretty much got my dad and I started on arcade games. We started out playing Pac-Man in 1980. My dad and I played Pac-Man, and we really liked it. And one of the things that really changed our lives is when Black Knight came out in 1980. When we saw Black Knight, my dad and I our mouths hit the floor. We had never seen a pinball machine ever like that. And I remember my dad and I saying, "Dad, you know, this is really amazing." That was probably one of the most enjoyable times I ever had with my dad was when we played that Black Knight pinball machine. And it took us a half hour just to get on the machine to play because there was a line of people waiting to play it. So basically, that kind of got my dad and I started on the arcade machine bug. It was the fact that we played Black Knight, and then basically from that point on, we just kept playing game after game. I went to Shakey's Pizza, and we played Miss Pac-Man in 1982. Played games like Junior Pac-Man, Donkey Kong, a lot of games that we had growing up. And then what happened next was my dad ended up going from Vestal, New York. We ended up moving out to Santa Maria, California. When we were in Santa Maria, California, that's when I really got to liking games. My dad also enjoyed them too, but that's when I really saw games. We were out in California during the arcade explosion, and I saw all the classic games. That was where the arcade games were, a lot of the games were first released, was in California. We had 3 game rooms just down the street from where we were at. We had Cheap Leaps, which was an arcade that my dad and I went to. They had Q*bert, Dig Dug, games like that. We had a Shakey's Pizza. And also, in addition, they also had games that we really enjoyed there. They had games for example, they had Scramble and a bunch of other games. They had Joust and several other games were there. And we also had a place called Fun and Games. That was also another big arcade we used to go to. So we had 3 arcades when we lived in Santa Maria, California, that we could go to and really had a lot of fun with. Now, what ended up happening was my dad and I played all these machines, and we really started to have a really nice time. We would go out and play. But then what basically happened is my dad got moved from California. We had to move back out here to Maryland, where my dad was with IBM, because he had been working at Vandenberg Air Force Base out in California. Then he got moved from IBM, moved him out here on another contract that he had, and we moved here to Maryland. And then we also discovered another thing that we enjoyed doing. My dad and I found a place called the Home Amusement Company that in Maryland that used to sell arcade machines. Now, understand, before this, my dad and I had experiences out in California, but when we saw Home Amusement Arcade, that just blew our minds. We figured, oh my goodness, we can get an arcade machine in our house. And 1985, we got our first 3 games in the game room. I remember that so well. My dad and I bought those. We had a Defender, we had a Joust, and we had a Paragon Pinball. Now, basically, these 3 games got us started. We had a lot of fun with these 3 games, but as you know, as things start out small, they always get bigger and something like that. So my dad and I said, this is a lot of fun. We should expand this. Now, at this point, I had been to several of these arcades also that my dad had gone to, and I got to the point where I basically had in Maryland, I had a couple arcades in Maryland that were fairly close to I could go to, but we didn't have any big ones like we had in California. We didn't have any that were close to us here like we had in California. So we said, you know what, if we want to make an arcade, we better make our own. Now, I had gone to Putt golfing games and play games like Terminator 2 and games like that with my friends, and that was in 1987. I started doing it with my friends, but my dad and I still had a passion for playing games, so we started building our own arcade room. And after these 3 games got started, it was just one game after another we kept adding. Eventually, the game room had almost 25 different games in it. We had about maybe 12 pinball machines and maybe 15 or so arcade games. We had all the classics. We had a Paragon machine. We had Medusa. We had we had Paragon. We had Medusa. We had Jungle Lord. We had Vector. We had Black Hole, Black Knight. Not Black Knight. I'm sorry. We had Black Hole. We also had a haunted house, and Bonsai Run, and it just went on and on and on. Eventually, we had a whole row of pinball machines, and then we also had a row of arcade games. And after we got Robotron Defender, then we started adding even more. We got Stargate in there, we got Mappy, Missile Command, Pac-Mania, Pac-Man. Miss Pac-Man. All the games that were coming out, we would get. We had our own Dig Dug machine. We had Junior Pac-Man. And then we also got into the pin video machines, the pinball videos. We got machines. Basically, we bought Great Indicators. We got that. That was one game we had. We also had Baby Pac-Man. And basically, these games were filling our game room. We ended up filling 3 rooms in our basement arcade with these machines. And it got to the point where we were basically adding a new machine about every 6 months. We would add a new machine. So eventually got to the point where we had an awful lot of machines. Now, understand, my dad and I had the best times of my life ever with my dad. When we played in that game room on Fridays and Saturdays, my dad and I had the best time we ever had. My dad was never really into sports and things like that. He was never into bowling. I was into bowling. My dad never was really into bowling. But one thing we enjoyed doing is we enjoyed going to game arcades. My dad and I always enjoyed that. And that was a big influence on us building our own arcade room. And what ended up happening was, by the time we were into the 90s, we had a pretty extensive arcade room, and we were having a lot of fun. And what also ended up happening at that point is we also discovered that having arcade machines is fun, but it also can be an expensive hobby to maintain. So basically, we at some points in our game room, everything worked fine in the very beginning. But then we would start having problems. Games would break. Robotron needed chips that were $80 a piece, and then we also started to have people come in to fix our machines because they weren't working. Now, understand that during the time of Dad and everything, we didn't have a whole lot of machines that weren't working. There were at times maybe 4 or 5, and they would get fixed, and we would keep them running. But then the unthinkable happened in 1995, December 1995, my dad passed. My dad had pancreatic cancer, and unfortunately, I lost the entire motivation I had for playing arcade games. Basically, from 95, probably 95 to about 97, basically, I didn't go in the game room at all. I didn't play games at all down in the game room. I was just it was very depressing to even go down and play games. And what also started happening was, I didn't want to go down there. Keeping the games going just was not the same without my dad. It just wasn't. The thing that really changed my life is I visited one of my friends that I can't remember if it was in 98 or 99. I got a chance to see a multi-game arcade machine. I had never seen one of those before. I never didn't even realize that they existed. That pretty much is what got me back into video games. What ended up happening was, basically back in 96, 97, we ended up selling all the arcade machines in our basement because either they weren't working or they were having problems, and I was just too depressed to keep them in the game room. I just didn't have any fondness for keeping them anymore. So basically, we sold most of those games. We kept 2 machines. We had a Bonsai Run, and I had a Fire pinball machine that I kept in addition to a Sinistar video game. But basically, what ended up happening was those games as well. Eventually, they ended up breaking and not working either. So at one point, I had no arcade machines at all that were working there, except for the Sinistar video game. And what happened after that is, eventually, I discovered that there is a program called MAME that you can actually play arcade machines on. And after seeing this game at a friend's house, he had a Moldicade. I said, you know what? I think I could build one of those. So basically, once I had all the machines basically sold, I sold my arcade machines to a place called TNT Amusement. They basically came and they picked up my pinball machines that didn't work anymore, and they traded in my my pinball machines. They brought me a Miss Pac-Man machine, a cocktail machine, and I had a Sinistar machine that basically I turned those into Moldicades. What I had to do is, I had to learn how to build one of these arcade machines, and I went to the forums and things like that on YouTube and found out videos on how to build your own arcade machines. I ended up taking a course on computers on YouTube, a 24-episode course on how to build computers, and I learned how to build computers, and that pretty much got me started on building my own arcade machine. The Sinistar arcade machine I had basically wasn't working anymore. So what I ended up doing was I ended up gutting the machine out completely and putting in my own arcade controls. There was a place I went to on the internet called the X Arcade, which is basically where I bought my initial controls and everything that worked with the computer that would allow me to build an arcade machine. And basically in 1998, 1998, 1999, I basically made my first multicade game. It was a very simple, it had a very simple computer, but the thing to keep in mind about these computers is I built these computers from the ground up. They weren't off-the-shelf computers. I had taken a course on how to build computers and basically learned how to build them. I'm going to show you a video later on that shows you what sort of things are in these arcade machines to make them work. But basically, once I had that built, that basically got me back in the arcade machine movement, and that basically got me building arcade machines again. I started building my own from the ground up, and then I discovered that I had a real passion for them. And the nice thing about it is, when I started building with computers, then the reliability issues were gone. The arcade machines started working just fine. I didn't have any problems. And you also have to remember that at the time I was growing up, I didn't have the finances to keep arcade machines going either, keeping them fixed and keeping them running. So I discovered that for me, building a home arcade machine, that was the best thing I ever did. And the best thing I ever did after my dad passed was building my own home arcade machine. And that's basically where I'm at today. That was the birth of all these arcade machines that you see today. Right now in my room, now you see that I have the two arcade machines here. I have the Namco Reunion machine and I have the Miss Pac-Man machine. And then the later tour, I'm going to show you the downstairs game arcade. That's where my other arcade machines are that I built. It's basically been a legacy over the past since '97. I've been building arcade machines ever since, and now it's basically I have the two machines I have in the room down here, which up here, which is the Miss Pac-Man. I have the Namco Reunion that's behind me, and I have the Miss Pac-Man in front of me. But then down in the game room, I have the original, one of the original machines that I had. The Sinistar cabinet I don't have anymore. I ended up selling that one because somebody needed the cabinet. So I ended up converting a Namco, I had a Namco Pac-Mania machine into my second arcade machine. And that basically is a template for all the machines you see today. That Namco Pac-Mania machine was basically the template that all my machines are built off of from that one machine. When I show you the game room arcade, you're going to get a chance to see all the games that I built from this point on, including the original one that I converted after I had the Sinistar machine that I converted. I'll be showing those to you in a later video to show you all the different machines I have that are basically not part of my family. And I just want to make this. Video just to tell you that the legacy of arcade machines now it still carries on in my life today, and I think my dad would be pretty proud of me the fact that I started playing games ago, because basically it shaped my life. I play arcade games probably 2, 3, 4 times a week now. I play them on average, and you're going to see on my video that there's also sometimes I'll even have play sessions that I record to show you some of the different games that you may have never seen that you might want to try on your own. So this basically is just a video I wanted to put together, let you know where I started out, when games started out, and how I continued having games to this day, and still do. And the games still influence me today. I still go to places like Dave & Buster's. My friends and I were just there the other day. I still like to play some of the newer games, Dirty Driving, Daytona USA. Those type of games are still a lot of fun. But for me, the classic arcade games that they had from the 80s, from the 1980s on, Miss Pac-Man, those were games my dad and I grew up. And I'll never forget those. And that's one of the reasons why my arcade machines, that's one of the main emphasis I have on my arcade machines is to play the classic games that we had growing up. And I hope you all had enjoyed this video and enjoyed hearing a history about how I got involved in video games. And I think you're going to enjoy the next coming videos too. I'm going to have showing all the different arcade machines that I've built now, and also showing what my home arcade looks like today. I think my dad would be really proud of it. And I'm going to show that to you in a future video. Thanks for watching.